Hello. Today we decided to hack into this Cobalt self-propelled electric lawnmower in an effort to make it FPV radio controlled. Now this thing is a rather simple device, but it is peppered with micro switches and safety switches that we're going to use to actually drive it. Instead of simply gutting this thing entirely and putting in all my controlling circuits, new motor controller, etc., I can simply use the existing switch gear and activate it with the remote control receiver from your standard, remote control vehicle transmitter for an airplane, car, boat, truck, whatever, and use what are called PWM switches in place of all the micro switches. Micro switches, one of these things here, and this one was for the blade engage. Click. When you pull the lever to engage the blade, that's what you're doing. There's here we have these blue things, and the handle is still in place. You pull one to engage the blade, the other one was to start the drive wheels. And but in order to engage the blade, you have to have a start switch too. There's a little button you have to push and hold down while you're engaging the blade, or it won't start. You can let go of the button once it starts, but you have to hold on to the lever. So I would need a channel on my receiver for the start switch. I would need one for the blade engage. I would need one to engage the drive wheels. And I would need one for the, for the blade. There's a blade engage. I want to start. No. And I think that's it. Well, then for steering, of course. I went for steering. Alright, so I pulled all the wires back out of the harness after carefully labeling them, and also writing down on a piece of paper what each wire does, because the PWM relays have the same type of contacts as the micro switches do, a set of normally open and a set of normally closed. So all you have to do is solder these wires from the original switches on the normally open and normally closed contacts, or common, whatever the case may be. Just duplicate their locations on the micro switch onto the PWM switch. Those are like $8. You can get them all over the place. Mostly on eBay. They're going to come from like China, so it takes a while to get here. But Servo City has them. Ready Made RC here in Ohio has them. That's where I'm getting mine. Should be here tomorrow. So I got 4, because I need a 4th one to reverse the drive wheel, so I can have a backup gear. Now, how we're going to do that is we're going to use an 8-pin relay. Which I'll handle over here. Here it is. Use an 8-pin relay, and this has 2 sets of normally open, normally closed contacts. So I can feed it from the normal motor power, which is here, and this goes into the motor. So I can feed it from that, and then I can use this relay fed from a PWM relay to reverse it. So when the relay is made, it will reverse the motor wiring and the wheels go backwards. When it's not, it'll go forward. So, formerly this thing obviously only had a forward gear, but by adding this relay in conjunction with the PWM relay, I can send a reverse signal. I would probably always stop the mower entirely before going into reverse. This thing has a soft start on the motor and the wheels. So if you try to reverse the polarity immediately while you're still feeding power, it might do some damage. I'm not really sure. So that's how I'm going to drive it. If I have to reverse, I'm going to come to a complete stop, hit the reverse switch. That'll engage the relay, reverse these polarity of the motor feed wires, and then I will hit the start drive wheels again, and then it'll go back in reverse. So that's how that's going to work. Everything else. Oh, there's also a speed potentiometer, which is this thing. There's a little throttle you had on the handlebar that this turned up and down, slightly, probably not its entire bit of travel. The motor does in fact use all 40 volts. I was hoping it was a 12 volt motor to drive the wheels, and they just tapped off a couple of cells in the pack and got 12 volts for it. But no, when you turn this thing up, it sends 40 volts to the motor. So a 40 volt motor controller, even a DC one, they're pretty expensive, and I would have done that to get this thing to going forward and reverse. As is, I won't have variable. I would have had variable speed that way, but I won't have variable speed. Not from the transmitter. I can set the speed before I take off, but once it leaves me and is going around the yard, I can't change the speed unless I pull it up next to me and dial this up. But that's no biggie. I'm not going to like be throttling up and down a whole lot anyway. Just going to set at a nice slow speed and putt around the areas I have to mow. So now how are we going to steer this thing? Well, most of the axles and stuff on this thing are 1/2 inch, which is kind of handy. So I went to the corner hardware store, and they have these clevises. They're 1/2 inch holes here, and they're 1/2 inch, I think 1/2 inch 20 thread. I just drilled that out to a 1/2 inch straight, and this slides over the axle, and you can drill I drilled a 1/4 inch hole through and put a nut and bolt through there, and that holds it steady. And then I dropped the bolt through here. I cut the head off another bolt and welded it to the side of that one, going through here. So you can see it's now bolted on. Remember, this is all 1/2 inch, so it's pretty easy to find this stuff. And the wheels can now pivot. I don't have my steering servo yet. That's actually on the mail. Should be here today sometime. But when I do, I'm going to figure out the mechanism to move us back and forth. My servo only has 2 inches of travel, but it's got pretty good amount of force. I think like 15-20 pounds of force. And it runs right off the receiver just like a regular servo would. So I'll just weld a little connecting arm here, and then put a tie rod on it like a ball joint or something. I have some ball clevises, and it'll steer the mower back and forth when I'm going for the yard, hopefully. So anyway, the thing does drive real nice on its own. I had it this morning just pulling on the switches and letting it drive around the yard. So it does definitely propel itself, and doesn't even have to go as fast as I was going with it. So anyway, I think all grand total I have invested in this thing is $280 for the mower I got used. Relay is like $10. Each PWM switch is like $8, so it's, that was like $30 for those. So 42, 3. I got about $320 into this thing. Oh, plus the steering actuator, another 100. So make that $420 into this thing. But I'm not counting the cost of the some of the electronic accessories, because they're just leftover crap from my model airplane stuff, like the receiver and the receiver voltage regulator, because it has to be 5 volts to the receiver. I need 12 volts for the relay, so I'm going to put a small lithium polymer 12-volt battery on here, about 3,000 milliamp hours, and that one will run the relay, and it will feed the receiver pack, so it'll be about 5 volts for that, and it will also drive the steering servo for the front wheel turning. So anyway, I will make another video, part 2 of this, when I get it all together and running. Hopefully tomorrow. My stuff should be here. Peace.